What up, y'all? It's your boy, Mr. Downtown Ray Melo, and you're listening to the Entertainment Report on iHeartRadio, live from Dubai for Friday, September 29th, 2017, delivering some major stories and trends going on in the world of entertainment and beyond. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, facebook.com/The Entertainment Report with Ray Melo, that's RAYMELO, on Twitter at The Enter Report, or on Instagram at The Entertainment Report. You can listen to the show anytime you want on iHeartRadio. Just go to iHeart.com or your iHeart phone app, search for The Entertainment Report, and it'll take you to the page. Hugh Hefner, who parlayed $8,000 in borrowed money in 1953 to create Playboy, the hot-button media empire renowned for a magazine enriched with naked women and intelligent interviews just as revealing, died of natural causes Wednesday at the Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles. He was 91. Hefner's son, Cooper Hefner, the chief creative officer of Playboy Enterprises, said in a statement, "My father lived an exceptional and impactful life as a media and cultural pioneer and a leading voice behind some of the most significant social and cultural movements of our times in advocating free speech, civil rights, and sexual freedom." While most famous for Playboy, the businessman dabbled in all forms of media, including hosting his own TV shows, beginning with Playboy's Penthouse in the late 1950s and early 60s. Shot in his hometown of Chicago and syndicated, the show featured Hefner in a tuxedo and smoking a pipe surrounded by playmates and interviewing such celebrities as Bob Newhart, Don Adams, and Sammy Davis Jr. The show boosted his personal and professional reputation and promoted what eventually became known as the Playboy philosophy, a lifestyle that includes politically liberal sensibilities, nonconformity, and, of course, sophisticated parties with expensive entertainments and the ever-present possibility of recreational sex. Though Hefner maintained that he was a relatively late bloomer in that department, remaining a virgin until he was 21 years old. Hefner followed that show with Playboy After Dark, which had a similar format, but with more rock and roll, including appearances by the Grateful Dead, Three Dog Night, Harry Nilsson, and Linda Ronstadt. The syndicated Screen Gems show was taped at CBS in Los Angeles and ran for 52 episodes in 1969 and 1970. Hefner also co-produced hundreds of Playboy brand videos and a few feature films such as Roman Polanski's Macbeth and Monty Python's first film, and now for something completely different, both released in 1971. He had been a sought-after guest on TV shows as far back as 1969 when he played a control agent on an episode of Get Smart, and most recently he appeared on Curb Your Enthusiasm, Entourage, and Sex and the City, as well as in animated shows like The Simpsons and Family Guy. Hefner also made cameos in several movies, most recently in 2008's The House Bunny, which told the fictional story of a Playboy bunny played by Anna Faris, who was kicked out of the Playboy Mansion, the famous real-life 22,000 square foot house in Los Angeles where Hefner lived for more than 4 decades and where he hosted famously decadent parties that attracted celebrity A-list through D. House sold for $100 million in August with the provision that Hefner be allowed to live there for the rest of his life. Hefner became the unofficial spokesman for the sexual revolution that preeminated the 1960s and 70s. He is both lauded and criticized by feminists of the era, with some accusing him of objectifying women, while others said he liberated and empowered them. During a conversation with Gloria Steinem in 1970, Hefner dismissed feminism as foolish, and Steinem told him, "What Playboy doesn't know about women could fill a book. There are times when a woman's reading a Playboy feels like a Jew reading a Nazi manual." Hefner was a staunch supporter of abortion, including helping to finance the landmark Roe v. Wade decision in 1973, and most recently was an outspoken advocate of same-sex marriage and his dedication to such issues, along with his distribution of pornography, and pariah in some religious circles. He wrote in 1963 in one of his many broadside aims at Christian leaders, "By associating sex with sin, we have produced a society so guilt-ridden that it is almost impossible to view the subject objectively." Hefner also launched the Playboy Channel in 1982, a premium cable outlet that has since been sold and rebranded Playboy TV, and is more explicitly sexual than when it was under his purview. He created the Playboy Club, nightclub chain that still exists as a novelty, but in its heyday in the 1960s, the era's biggest stars, including Rat Packers Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, could be spotted holding court while food and drinks were served by the barely dressed bunnies. All this was loosely reflected on the NBC series The Playboy Club, which was set in 1961 and canceled in 2011 after just 3 episodes aired. Playboy magazine, though, was Hefner's bread and butter and his first love. He created it as a young man 3 years removed from earning a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. a few years after quitting a job as a promotional copywriter at Esquire. He borrowed $1,000 from his mom and $7,000 from more than 40 other investors for a publication he was set to call Stag Party until he discovered a magazine called Stag already existed. He purchased a picture of a naked Marilyn Monroe that was taken before she was famous and put it on the cover of his first magazine, which he named Playboy. The first issue hit newsstands in December 1953. Hefner didn't bother to put a date on it because he was doubtful there'll be a future issues, but it sold 54,000 copies, 80% of the total he had printed, and his largely male audience thirst for more. The iconic mascot, a silhouette of a bunny in a bow tie, made its debut in the second issue, chose because Hefner thought rabbits carried sexual meaning and were shy, vivacious, jumping animals. Through the years, Hefner convinced many Hollywood starlets to reveal more of themselves on his pages than perhaps anywhere else, with Barbra Streisand, Madonna, Mariah Carey, Lindsay Lohan, Kate Moss, Dolly Parton, Sally Field, Joan Collins, and Drew Barrymore among the many who warranted in-depth cover stories or Q&A accompanied by sexy picture roles. The Playboy interview launched in 1962 when the magazine hired Alex Haley to interview jazz legend Miles Davis, and subsequent subjects including filmmakers Stanley Kubrick and Woody Allen, actresses Mae West and Bette Davis, civil rights luminaries Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, writer, philosopher Ayn Rand, and in 1965 the Beatles. 1971 interview, John Wayne complained about perverted films coming from Hollywood. In 1976, presidential candidate Jimmy Carter famously uttered, "I've committed adultery in my heart many times." Through the years, a running joke among men became that they bought Playboy not for the pictures but for the articles, though it ranged because some of the most notable writers in modern history appeared in the magazine, including John Steinbeck, Ray Bradbury, Ian Fleming, Kurt Vonnegut, Norman Mailer, and Jack Kerouac. Playboy Enterprises, the umbrella company Hefner founded in 1953, had fallen on hard times on a few occasions. Long gone is the Big Bunny, the private jet Hefner used decades earlier, and layoffs had plagued the enterprise when it went private in 2011 after years of declining stock prices. In 2008, it was reported that Hefner had resorted to selling tickets to his famous parties at the Playboy Mansion, with the proceeds going to the Playboy Enterprise. Hefner's daughter Christy ran the company for more than 20 years but left in 2009. The magazine underwent a redesign in March 2016 that eliminated new photos from its pages, but that practice did not last long. Hugh Morrison Hefner was born April 9, 1926 in Chicago to parents Glenn and Grace Hefner. A brother Keith came 3 years later. He had described his upbringing as Puritan and repressive and said, quote, "In many ways it was my parents who unintentionally developed the iconoclastic rebellion in me. However, in my book, My Mr. Playboy, Hugh Hefner and the American Dream, author Steve Watts suggested that Hefner's formative years weren't too much different than others of the era, except that his bedtime was a little earlier than that of his friends, and his Sundays were reserved for church and family activities. Also, there wasn't a lot of outward affection from his parents." Watts wrote, "There was much calmness and kindness among the Hefners, but little passion. Hefner, though, chafed at even in the mild restraints put in place by his parents. His mother later confessed her parenting style came from advice she read in Parents magazine, which at the time recommended skimpy displays of affection and strict bedtimes, and noted that kisses on the mouth should be avoided because that could spread germs. Hefner was non-athletic and introverted, but incredibly imaginative, and he immersed himself in movies, music, radio, cartoons, and a love for animals. At about age 6, he allowed his dog to sleep on his beloved bunny blanket, which was repleted with images of rabbits, and when the pet died, the parents burnt the blanket, an experience Watts says may have influenced Hefner's choice of a bunny for the logo of his empire years later. When he was 9, Hefner published his first newspaper, which he sold to neighbors, and he created a couple of more publications for his grammar school. When a 4th grade teacher complained to his parents that he spent far too much class time drawing cartoons, he apologized for his transgression via a poem. "I will not make my teacher mad because that would make me sad. I will not draw at all in school, and I won't break a single rule." As a teenager, Hefner read Edgar Allan Poe, H.G. Wells, and author Conan Doyle, according to Watts. He created a secret organization he called the Shutter Club for those who shared his passion for horror and science fiction, and he published 5 issues of Shutter magazine. Watts wrote, "The boys were delighted when Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, and Peter Lorre replied to their solicitation and accepted honorary positions in the club. He also started a newspaper in high school and took an interest in theater, starring in several plays." A dramatic change in Hefner's life occurred in the summer before his junior year when he crushed hard on a girl. Two took up dancing, but when she invited someone else to a hayride, it prompted him to make a personal overhaul, according to Watts. He transformed himself into a Sinatra-like guy with loud shirts and hip language, and he honed his dancing skills and began referencing to himself as Hef. Soon, he and his friend Jim Brophy were the most popular kids at Steinsman High School, and it was around this time that Hefner's attraction to the opposite sex, quote, veered close to obsession. He joined the U.S. Army in 1944 and was assigned a desk job at various places statewide. Hefner drew cartoons for Army newspapers and attended dances and movies regularly. He was honorably discharged as a corporal in 1946 and returned to Chicago and enrolled at the University of Illinois when his cartoons took a sexual theme. In 1947, he earned a pilot's license. When Hefner became managing editor of the college humor magazine Shaft, he introduced a feature called Co-Ed of the Month, an obvious precursor to the Playboy Playmate of the Month. He read Alfred Kinsky's Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, published in 1948, and electrified him, Watts wrote. Years later, Hefner's college friends would recall marveling at how openly he spoke about matters pertaining to sex. Despite complaints later in life that his dad wasn't affectionate and his mom was overly Victorian, Hefner wrote in college, had I had the ability to choose two perfect people for my parents, I don't think I could have found a pair better for me than God did. After graduating, he failed to sell comic strips for newspaper syndication, then enrolled at Northwestern with the plan of becoming a college professor. Hefner quit after a year and had a series of unfulfilling jobs at various magazines, including Esquire for $60 a week, which he quit when he didn't get the $5 raise he sought. In 1952, he joined Publishers Development Corp., which put out small magazines with new photographs. And a year later, he was making $120 a week at a children's magazine. Found success on a local level in 1951 with the publication of his book of cartoons called That Toddling Town, a rowdy burlesque of Chicago manners and morals. The front cover was a sketch of a stripper. Hefner married a classmate, Millie Williams, in 1949, but the troubled marriage faced growing pressures from Hugh's increasingly active sexual imagination, Watts wrote. The couple hosted risque parties that included stag films. Hefner began suggesting wife swapping, and he eventually slept with his brother's wife, though Millie backed out of sex with Keith. They had a daughter, Christy, in 1952 and a son, David, in 1955 before divorcing in 1959. Hefner set out to create his media empire at a particular low point in his life in 1953 when he was despondent over a marriage he knew wasn't working and a career that had stalled. He recalled in 2004 that he stood on the bridge in Chicago in a dead winter thinking, I've got to do something. That year, the first issue of Playboy was published. In 1989, Hefner married Kimberly Conrad, a former Playmate of the Year, and the couple had sons Marston and Cooper. They divorced in 2010, and Hefner married Crystal Harris 2 years later. In 2011, Hefner told the New York Times that he had already chosen and paid for his final resting place, a crypt next to Marilyn Monroe's in Westwood. As word spread overnight of Hugh Hefner's death at the age of 91, celebrities praised the Playboy publishing icon for bringing sexual freedom to mainstream culture. In an emotional note accompanied by a tearful video, Pamela Anderson called him the most important person in my life. She also said he suffered from back pain prior to his death. Hustler founder and publisher Larry Flint shared his great admiration for his longtime rival. He tweeted, truly sad at the moment. I've always held great admiration for Hugh. He had a remarkable presence about him. My thoughts and prayers go out to his family and our friends at Playboy. Hefner's ex-girlfriend, Kendra Wilkinson from TV's The Girl Next Door, was at a loss for words. She tweeted, can't really put into words how I really feel. It's easy to say he will be missed and how much I loved him. There's a lot more than that. Nancy Sinatra called him one of the nicest men I've ever known. Godspeed, Hugh Hefner. Bob Saget quoted Hefner directly, racism, war, bigotry, but sex itself, no. What a sad, cold world this would be if we weren't sexual beings. I mean, that was the heart of who we are. Former Playmate Jenny McCarthy saluted him as a revolutionary who changed lives, especially mine. I hope I made you proud. Larry King remembered Hefner as a giant in publishing, journalism, free speech, and civil rights. NBA Hall of Famer Dennis Rodman declared him an icon of all icons and a game changer. Another trailblazer, producer Norman Lear, declared Hefner a true explorer, a man who had a keen sense of the future. Kim Kardashian said it was an honor to have been a part of Team Playboy. Love you have, she added. Filmmaker Josh Whedon tweeted the dichotomy that was Hugh Hefner. Wait, is it possible that Hugh Hefner did good and bad things? Richard Lewis wrote, few did more for writers, including myself, breaking boundaries. Actress Donna D'Errico, who credited Hefner with igniting her career by putting her in Playboy, saluted him as an icon of epic proportions. And Dennis Hoff, the star of HBO's Cat House and the owner of the Moonlight Bunny Ranch, hailed Hefner as a profound vision and enormous courage. The Reverend Jesse Jackson lauded his social advocacy, writing, Hugh Hefner was a strong supporter of the civil rights movement. We shall never forget him. May he rest in peace. Perez Hilton wrote, trailblazing icon, American institution, rests in that big grotto in the sky, Hugh Hefner. Rob Lowe wrote, I had a number of great conversations and with Hugh Hefner. He was such an interesting man, true legend. What an end of an era. The Weekend wrote, R.I.P. Hugh Hefner. Pam Oswald tweeted, as per his wishes, Hugh Hefner's body will be left in a fort in the woods for other kids to find and pass around. Kat Dennings tweeted, I met Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Mansion. He was very nice to my mom. Don't ask. Hashtag RIP Hef. Aubrey O'Day wrote, at Hugh Hefner, when I did Playboy, he spoke words to me that affected my direction. He was a man the room would stop for when he entered. Hashtag RIP. Gene Simmons wrote, we love you. Hashtag Hef. Hashtag Hugh Hefner. Mike Epps wrote, RIP to the OG. Hashtag Hugh Hefner. Tommy Laren tweeted, RIP Hef, you broke the mode. Hashtag Hugh Hefner. Jeff Timmons wrote, in honor of the late legend Hugh Hefner, and Playboy is here a shot of the love of my life. Constantine Morales wrote, rest in peace Kingpin. Hashtag Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansion. And that's your entertainment report for Friday, September 29th, 2017. I'm your host, Mr. Downtown Ray Melo. I'll be back on Monday to deliver some major stories and trends going on in the world of entertainment and beyond. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Facebook.com/The Entertainment Report with Ray Melo. That's RAYMELO. On Twitter at The Enter Report, or on Instagram at The Entertainment Report. You can listen to this episode or any previous episodes of The Entertainment Report anytime you want on iHeartRadio. Just go to iHeart.com or your iHeart phone app, search for The Entertainment Report, and it'll take you to the page. Everyone have a great weekend. Good night, and God bless you all.